My name is Leonard Laconia. I was born in Shenandoah, Virginia. It's a small town in Page County, Virginia. I attended school there, and after high school, I went in the same school my whole life. And when I finished high school, it was hard employment. It was after World War II, and the veterans had all the jobs. So the people that I played football with in high school, we decided we would join. We went to join the Marines, and they had a buddy system. If you joined the Marines, you would stay with the same division. But we had a couple that couldn't pass. One had a crooked arm and that thing. So we decided none of us would go. If we couldn't go, we'd all go together.
Oh.
So
you were very close to each other.
So we went back home, and we knew an Army recruiter. So we went to see him, and the people that couldn't make it with the Marines said they wouldn't go. They said if the Marines don't take us, the Army won't take us. So it was just a couple of us then went, and we joined there. Well, he had his Army quota full, so we went with the Air Force. He handled both. He recruited both. I was born January the 10th, 1931.
31, and when did you graduate high school?
It was in 48, June 48.
June 48.
And we looked for jobs and things for a couple of months, and then we went into the service.
Right. So, do you remember when you joined the Air Force, the day? Or approximately what month of year?
I think it was October 48, I think.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember the day. I stayed with them over 20 years, so a long time.
Yeah.
My memory's not good.
Where did you go to receive the basic training?
Lackland Air Force Base at San Antonio, Texas. Typical, it was the Army style basic training back then. And then I went from there. After that, I went to Fort Warren, Wyoming for tech school. And then I went and was assigned to the Air Material Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Then I went from there to Fort Myers and Naval Quarters K in D.C. What we did, we were screening records, officers' records, for derogatory information. They had a reduction in force. They were reducing the forces of the military then, and we made a list. Anybody that had derogatory information, then they were eliminated, taken out of the Air Force. Of course, a couple years later, the war in Korea started, and they recalled those guys back again. So, and then when I got back to Wright-Patterson from that detail, I had orders for Japan, and I went to Japan in early '49. I guess it was. They have the Army of Occupation there, and I was stationed at down in Kyushu at a base called Itazuki. And that's on Kyushu. That's down south. And of course, we were there until the war started in Korea. When the war started.
Let's go back to your personal aspect. Laconia. What's the ethnic origins of that last name?
Well, I have a brother that does the genealogy, and the best he can determine is he's found we were Huguenots living in France.
What?
Huguenots. And the Huguenots, they were beheading the Huguenots and eliminating and they migrated to Ireland. They got out of France. I mean, a lot of Huguenots had already been eliminated.
Yeah.
And the spelling is entirely different now. I don't know, it's all screwed. He's done genealogy, and the way it was spelled in France is a little bit different than.
Tell me about your life in Japan. What did you do after 9 hours of work daily?
Well, we mostly did a lot of drinking at the cabarets, and that's about all we did. Yeah. We did some traveling. We had beach parties, and down in Kyushu, the weather's nice. You can have nice warm weather. So we lived pretty good. wasn't bad at all.
And did you receive any specific training targeting Korea?
You mean before we got to
Yeah,
Korea?
before, while you were in Kyushu.
No, I'll tell you, that was the problem. With the Army and the Air Force, we had hardly any training. We didn't do any drills or hardly ever. We had what we call a tactical evaluations. And our unit used to come out first. And then the 36th, they came out second. And then the next squadron, the 80th, they never made it. So when the war started, we were the first. The 35th, the 36th, and the 80th didn't have to go because they weren't combat ready. So
you were lucky.
Yeah,
you were spoiled, right?
Yeah. So that's what you get. Yeah.
So nothing special training, but easy life. There?
Easy life. Yeah.
How much were you paid there in Japan?
Oh,
Your work.
I think pay then was $60 a month.
And you spent most of it.
Yeah, because you got 360 yen for an American dollar, and
Was a pretty good deal, right?
Yeah, we had.
Did you like raw fish? Did you eat raw fish and Japanese food?
Yeah, I liked the food. I liked everything about it. I liked everything about it.
So, had you ever been in Korea?
No.
You never been in Korea?
I'd never been until the war started.
Yeah, right. I mean, after war started, what happened to you?
Well, we went to Korea, and then.
Do you remember when was that?
Well, we went over and helped the embassy people out. Took them out on the 27th, I think. I think it was the 27th of June. Got the American embassy people.
In Japan.
Put them. No, well, we got them out of Seoul. We went to Seoul.
When did you leave for Korea? Do you remember?
Well, we flew out on the 27th of June, and it only took a matter of hours to
1950?
go. Yeah.
So as soon as war broke out?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the North Koreans were just on the outskirts of Seoul in a couple of days. I think it only took them 3-4 days to take Seoul.
Yeah.
And all the embassy people were being evacuated, and we took the Americans and we put them on C-54s and took them to Tachikawa. It's a base in Japan. And I guess from there, they went home. I don't know where they went.
Oh,
And the other embassies and the other civilians, they put them on buses and took them to Incheon. They left by ship.
So you involved in that operation?
Yeah, we just went to secure to make sure that they got out. We had there was three C-54s we were using, but a yak came over and strafed one of them, and I don't know if it completely disabled it or not. But one engine was smoking. It had nobody on board. They were just waiting. We had three, and we had loaded two of them, and I don't know what happened to the other one.
Wow. So was that a dangerous mission?
Well, it could have been, but we didn't stay long.
Nothing happened?
Well, they got the yak. They got at least one yak was shot down that was strafing the 54s, but they didn't do much damage. They just hit that one 54. They didn't get the ones that had people. We had already loaded.
So then, after you took them to Japan, did you come back to Korea?
No, we went back to our unit, and then we went. They took the whole unit up to Tsuwiki. It's an aerodrome. I guess it's on the north coast of Kyushu, and we had a couple weeks of combat training, supposedly combat training, and then we went back to Korea. But we couldn't take our airplanes because there's no strips that would support our aircraft. At that time, we had F-80s. We'd switched from F-51s to F-80s, and then we found that
F-51 to F-80.
Yeah, they had sent this was before the war. Before the war started, we had converted to F-80s, and the F-51s that we had, they had sent them to the United States, and most of them were given to the West Virginia National Guard. And then when the war started, we found that that the F-80 couldn't stay over the target long enough because they had to fly all the way from Japan, from Kyushu where we were at. They had to fly all the way to our targets, and they couldn't stay. By the time they flew all the way from Itazuki over to our target around Taegu, they could only stay a couple minutes. But they eventually, a month or so later, they converted back to the F-51s. We got the 51s back. I don't know if it's the same 51s or not, but the 51s that we'd sent to the States, we got them back. And
because that has more fuel.
yeah, they could stay a long time. Yeah, they could stay a long time. Yeah, they didn't burn fuel like a jet did.
Right. What was your specialty in the Air Force?
Well, I was a clerk when I started out, but they didn't need clerks, cooks, or MPs.
Okay.
If you were a cook, clerk, or an MP, they didn't need you. So I was. We had a system. They claim, I was just too young. I don't remember a lot of it, but they claim this forward controller system. They used it in World War II. And
what is forward control?
Yeah, forward controller.
What is that?
Well, you get a controller, and a controller is usually a pilot. Well, we had to be rated, and they could pull a 30-day tour as a controller on the line. They give you a Jeep and a radio, and usually a driver, a radio operator, mechanic, and one man for security. And you take your Jeep and you go up on the line up on the front, and when the Army has a problem or you spot something, sometimes the airplanes will come back and they'll spot some convoy on the road or something, and they give you the coordinates. We'll call an airstrike on it, and then of course a lot of times the infantry, they get hit right there on the line, and we would call airstrike. We would give them the coordinates, and they could come, and that was your air cover. That's the best air cover you could get.
So that was a dangerous mission.
Yeah, well, it really wasn't too bad until the Chinese came.
Right.
They evidently, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't in the know, but I think they had radio locators, and the North Koreans didn't have. And the minute we got on the radio, sometimes the North Koreans did too. They would fire a lot of mortar or artillery, but they didn't have too much of that. The Chinese didn't have too much big artillery. They had mostly mortars. And
when did you go back to Korea after you helped the U.S. Embassy people, withdraw from Korea? When was the second time that you were
I was just trying to remember that for Lou out there a while ago. Let's see. We went over and got the embassy people. We went for a couple weeks or maybe a month training up at Suwiki. That was combat training. Then we went back over around Taegu.
Around August of 1950?
Yeah, it was close to the Incheon landing.
Okay.
Because it must have been in Taegu. It must have been around the last of August or 1st September in that area someplace. I'm sorry I can't.
No, but it was 1950, around early September.
Yeah.
And then you had a mission as a forward controller.
Right. Well, I kept that job until until about November of 50. Mm-hmm. We got up as far as Pyongyang. Our whole unit moved. Well, we moved a lot, but my fighter squadron moved to Pyongyang. Pyongyang had two airports. They had one over, looked like on the northwest side of town, and one on the northeast side. And we went to K-23, our site. K-23 was the one on the right. I don't know who went or what was on the other side of the town. I just wasn't. I wasn't high enough rank to know all this stuff.
But you were always in the Jeep and going around and calling for airstrike and so on, right?
Yeah, we had a Jeep and a radio a radio jeep, and it was about 4 of us all together.
Pretend that it's in Pyongyang right now, and you find a Chinese soldier, and you're calling hurriedly to air pilot and asking for strike. Could you do action that? Pretend that this is the real?
Well, I had nothing to do with the calling. Really, we were security. The man that did this was our pilot. We had a pilot with us. He was the controller.
In the jeep.
He was the controller, and all he did was give the coordinates of the target, and then the fighters would do the rest of it. They would come in.
You were the kind of security there.
Yeah, we had. Well, yeah, because we were usually sometimes surrounded. I mean, we were right on the line. Sometimes you have to move fast, and well, after we figured they had radio locators, as soon as we made a radio call, we'd have to move.
So what happened around the region in Pyongyang? What did you do, and what happened to you?
Well, we moved from some site. I don't know all the sites we were at. I don't know. We from some site between Seoul and Pyongyang. We moved to K-Site 23.
What is that? Where is that?
That's at Pyongyang. Pyongyang had 2 airports at one time.
K-23.
And one of them was 24 and one was 23. 24 was on one side of town. We went to 23.
Okay.
And it got pretty bad. This was when the Chinese were, one day they told us there was 30,000 Chinese on the line in front of us. The next day they said there's 40,000. And now I think we found out there was 380,000 altogether, all Chinese. They were thick. And
we were all screwed up about that intelligence. Right?
Yeah.
You didn't know the Chinese were crossing the Yalu River in early October.
Well, they knew it, but I don't know about the intelligence. They didn't know how many. That's the problem. They were pretty good by concealing that. They didn't bring any heavy equipment with them, hardly any artillery, and no tanks or anything.
So they didn't see it as a military.
No, we didn't know it anyway. So after moving all that gear, when you move a squadron, you bring tons of engine parts and ammunition and fuel and all that stuff. We moved it up. 3 days later, we had to go back because the Chinese just come right in. We were so close that our sorties were only 15 minutes long. That means...
What does that mean?
Well, a sortie is a mission.
Yeah.
And the airplane we'd come and land, and we'd rearm it and put bombs and fix him up and refuel it, and he'd take off. And 15 minutes later, he'd come back. I mean, the Chinese were right at the end of the runway. And
so they used up all and had to come back, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So we left there, and 3 days after we got there, we had to pack up everything, and we moved back. And well, we kept moving back after that for a while. And I don't know what part of November, I guess by the last of November, we were back at Seoul City Airport, not Kimpo. They have another airport too. And we went Seoul City Airport, and the Chinese were following us. They went back as fast as we did. And so we had to move again. And we had lost so much equipment and everything that they evacuated us and took us back to Japan.
When?
It must have been the end of November or 1st of December of '50. We went back to our regular old base, but
Why weren't you there in Korea? Continuously? Why you went back to Japan?
well, the Chinese were chasing us out. They took everything. They took the strips that we were using up north, and they were just running us right out of.
So the Air Force has to move out from the peninsula not to be affected by the Chinese, right?
Yeah. They just overrun the airports or the strips we were on.
Right.
And the Army was just, well, they figured we were outnumbered 7-1, so, we didn't do very well. And we went to Japan, and we were going to regroup. We were going to get new airplanes, and they were getting us new equipment. We were going to re-equip. And we had a unit from California, the 452nd Bomb Group. They were called up and sent to Japan, but they weren't up to combat strength. They didn't have enough people. So they took people out of my unit. I was one of them. And they assigned us to the 452nd. So I went back to Korea with them. And they had B-26s.
When was that? 51?
Yeah, it was 51. I can't remember. I don't know exact date because I stayed with them until I had my points in, and I left Korea in November 51. I went home, but
you said it's a B-51. B-51.
Well, the new unit, the 452nd, had B-26s.
B-26.
B-26 is a light bomber. It's a two-engine. It's a light bomber. And I met some people in that outfit that I had been with in Japan because they had to pick people, regulars, out to bring that unit back up to strength so it could go. Each unit has a combat strength. You got to be up to have a certain number of people to, and I was one of them. One guy I knew at Japan was a master sergeant, and I met him one day walking up the strip, and he was a captain then. He was wearing captain bars, and he said he had been riffed after World War II, and he was recalled and put in the 452nd. He was a pilot, so. That's about one of the people I knew. I mean, you meet people that you know, and but I was with them until, and it was getting cold weather again. It was getting pretty cold.
Yeah. When you went back to Korea in 1951 with the B-26 unit, what was your mission? You were still...
I did about the same thing. Well, observer or controller, but mostly observer with them. You can fly as an observer. And mostly to notify the crew if you see any fighters, but there's the MiGs never came very far south.
Any mission that you thought that you did wonderful job so that you took out enemy soldiers? Do you remember anything like that?
I don't know.
I mean, you were at the right place and you were right to just communicate with the air tower so that the Air Force could scoop out some of the Chinese or anything like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything like that?
Yeah, I know we killed a lot of Chinese because when the Chinese first came in, we would call strafing missions, and they'd strafe them. But they were pretty smart. They would all fall down on the ground, lie down, and you'd get you wouldn't get too many. So we started, we got napalm, and when we got napalm, we did a good job then.
How powerful napalm was? How destructive napalm was?
Oh, it's bad. It'll cover about one canister will cover about the same area as a football field.
Wow.
It'll just hit, and then it just spreads. And if you can, well, we were close enough that when we call, you could feel the heat from the napalm. And if you get too close, you don't have to be right in it, but if you get too close, it burns the oxygen out of the air. You can't breathe. I guess it'll knock you out or maybe kill you. I don't know, but you don't have to be right in the. But the Chinese in the winter, they wore a big, heavy quilted uniform, and that stuff would just stick to them, and it was pretty bad. But it worked. It worked well.
Did you see people, the Chinese, burning with that napalm?
Yeah.
Did you see those?
Yeah.
Did you see the burned bodies?
Yeah, we had binoculars. We carried some 750 binoculars because we called airstrikes.
Right.
You need binoculars mainly for bunkers and stuff like that.
Right.
And if you spot them, but I didn't get any pictures of that. But
did we drop so many napalms?
Oh yeah, we used napalm later. Once we got it, we used a lot of it.
What was the other kinds of bombs that the Air Force used?
Well, we use We used a rocket, armor-piercing rocket on the tanks, and you napalm on tanks too. You use napalm on trucks, and that was good too. But they use different series of rockets, and of course we used the 50 caliber machine guns on the airplanes, and we used 500-pound bombs. We used everything we had, but that don't necessarily mean you can't stop them. I mean, you just can't stop them sometimes.
How was enemy Air Force? Were they?
We didn't have to worry. The MiGs wouldn't come down too far. They usually took off in Manchuria, and they wouldn't come because they were like our F-80s. They burn fuel fast, and we had the B-29s that were flying up and down the Yalu River, bombing the bridges, but that didn't stop the Chinese. They didn't need the bridges, evidently. I don't know if they swam the river or what they did, but they didn't need the bridges. And I got a guy that lives on my street here, and he was a B-29 on a B-29, and I told him what they did didn't stop the Chinese at all. Didn't slow them up. And but the MiGs wouldn't come down bother you. And early in the war, that Yak-9, it was similar. The Yak-9 was similar to a F-51. It was a prop-driven, and they would come around, but we knocked a lot of them down. They were easy to knock down.
So we actually dominated the air.
Yeah. We never had too much problem with that. We did. Now we had one guy. They called him Bed Check Charlie. We called him something else, but he would come at night. He killed one of our guys one night.
Friendly fire? Friendly fire?
With a bomb. He would come. Well, it was not bombs. He would fly. It was a light aircraft, sometimes a bi-wing, wing airplane, and he would drop grenades, mortar shells.
You mean enemy?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know if he was North Korean or Chinese.
You called that what? You called that guy what?
They called him Bed Check Charlie.
Oh,
but
Bed Check Charlie.
in the paper, in the Stars and Stripes was our paper over there, but we called him something else. A little profane. But he'd come at night and just as quiet, and we had some unit would be the night cover every night, the Marines night cover, and then we had a night fighter outfit. The 68th was our night cover, and whoever was on duty that night, no one ever got him. He would come in real slow and quiet. I don't think they ever shot one down, and they would come in. He came in one night, and I don't know, he damaged I don't know how many of our airplanes on the strip, and killed that one guy we had, and it was just harassment. You never know when he was coming down. We were staying in a Russian barracks in North Korea. Russia occupied North Korea when we occupied South Korea, and they built a big stone barracks. It was a nice barracks. We stayed in that when we were there, and he came over one night and dropped something, pretty good sized bomb right in, hit the building, just real close to where I was sleeping, and. But nobody ever shot him down. I don't know what he did or how he got by, but he was. We had a lot of harassment like that.
When was the happiest moment in your service?
The happiest? When I got word to come home. Yeah.
Were you writing back to your family?
Well, that was another thing. It was pretty rough to do too. For some reason, we didn't have any stationery. We used any paper we could find, and you didn't need a stamp. All you had to do was put "free" on the paper, but we wrote whenever we got a chance, whenever we could, and it was a problem the mail getting to you, coming back, because we moved around so much. And we all had a APO, Army Post Office number, but we got mail, but not real good. No. Not like the ones in the near Middle East over there now. They get on the computer and talk and see each other every night. We had none of that.
Had you have any chance to work with Korean force?
Mm?
Korean force? Did you have any Korean officer or soldier work with?
No, but they were with it. They were with our unit a lot. They were with our unit a lot. Yeah.
How about foreign air force, like Australia, British?
Yeah, we had the Australia and the British, and but we never dealt with them. We never. I guess they had their own controllers. I guess. I'm not sure. But I was with a British. We were with a British tank regiment or tank company one time. We were with them about a week, and they had the biggest tank in Korea. They had a Mark IV Centurion tank, and I don't know how well they made out, but we were with them. We gave them some air cover, and I was with a Turkish group for a while, and
How
then.
was Turkish?
Hmm?
How was Turkish soldier?
Yeah, they were good. They were good. Yeah. I worked, we had to take and pull a tour at the United Nations Reception Center. I forgot now where it was at, but we had to pull maybe a 2-week tour as these countries would send troops in. A lot of them didn't have the correct uniforms or equipment, and they would come to the United Nations Reception Center, and we'd give them helmets and American gear, and then they would go up on the line and be assigned to units on the line. But we had, when I worked there, we had the Filipinos come through there, and the Colombians.
Yep.
And I forgot. Philippines, Colombians. We had another outfit through there. I forgot who it was.
Thailand? Thailand?
I don't remember, but it could have been. We had about 3 units come through it when I was there.
So when you departed from Korea, Korea was almost devastated, right?
Did what?
Korea was almost devastated.
Oh, it was. It was terrible, terrible. And that was all the way up to Pyongyang. I don't know how the rest of it. I didn't get over around Incheon or Chosin, rather. I didn't get over there. But the rest of it. And Seoul was just, well, I was there, like I said, 2 days or a day after the war, and it was pretty good shape. But the North Koreans were already just on the north side of town.
Right.
And I don't know. I took my wife back. They have a revisit program.
Oh, you did?
I took her back in 2008, but the place had changed so much. I couldn't. It just as nice as it's probably one of the nicest countries. I stayed in 20 years in the military, and I traveled all over. We're all over Europe and everything, and that country is one of the nicest there is now. I'll tell you, I got some good pictures.
So
and then.
What do you think about your service and now, in retrospectively, what you did there and now what the Korea is? What do you think about that?
Oh, it's a pretty good investment, really. It cost a lot, but I mean, compare it with a lot of people go over there now. They don't know what it was like before.
Right.
But if you could see it back in '50 and look at it today, it's something. I took my son back in 2010. They take you on a different tour each time you go. So I got back down, and I got to go back down and see Suwon, and I saw the northern part up around it. They take you to DMZ all the time, but I got my wife and I. We went to see mostly the eastern part and up around the DMZ. Now, I took my son back, and it was the year we had the reenactment of the Incheon landing, and I got good pictures of that. That was really good. And I think the Korean Navy was involved in that, and they give us a big dinner, outside dinner. But that place is really, it's one of the nicest places I've been, and I've been in a lot of countries.
Any comments that you want to leave for this interview?
No, I'm just glad for the opportunity to to be here. But I don't know. I went so many years after the war. I stayed in service over 20 years, but we never discussed it in there. Nobody ever. You don't want to tell another GI War story, or he don't want to hear it.
Why is that you didn't want to tell about it? Why?
I don't know. There's so many. They had so many going on at the time. Shortly after I left Korea, they had the Vietnam War, and then they started the Middle East War, and so they don't discuss it too much in the service. I found that. And then I retired. I came and retired, and they formed this Korean War Veterans. And we didn't form our chapter until, 4 or 5 years ago. So now it brings some memories back, but we never gave it a thought until just recent, last couple of years.
So now what do you feel after you instituted your local chapter and talking about this and thinking back to these?
Yeah. Well, it was a good experience, really. I mean, I probably would have missed it, I guess. And I know a lot. I know a lot of the guys in our chapter. You never saw any action during the war. You know, they were there, but they never saw any. Well, they were there later. I mean, I figure if you were there after
1953.
Well, if you were there after 1951, from 50 to the end of 51, it was bad.
Yeah.
And then they were talking about an armistice when I was there.
Right.
Before I left, they started talking about that in 51.
Yeah.
And after that, after 51, it just, no one wanted to take a chance. The Chinese or North Koreans, they didn't want to take a chance because they were talking about armistice, and the battles just phased. No one showed an interest in it, really. Right. They thought, well, why go out there and get killed? They're gonna, and they eventually did sign armistice.
Right.
So things really slacked off. But up until the end of 51, it was pretty bad.
But at the end of the war, there was a severe battle to secure more land and territories, and the small hills that we fight.
Yeah, right on the DMZ, where the DMZ is today.
Right.
That's what they were wanting to, because whatever land you occupied at the time they signed the armistice,
right.
That was it. They did put in some pretty good battles but I don't think that was really necessary.
Do you have any message to our young generations about your service and war in general?
Well, I'm definitely not for war. Definitely not. And I don't know. The service is good. Being in the service is good, but and the reason you're there is for war. But that's pretty bad. And I think the country's having their share of it right now. We've just had one war after the other.
Yeah, America always engaged in a war.
Yeah, we had one war after the other.
Right?
Yeah, I was due to go to Vietnam, and I applied for ROTC duty. So I didn't do it intentionally, but once I applied and the war started, I thought, well, this is ideal, because why go to Vietnam? And then I went to, I think, a 4-year tour at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, and I worked with a ROTC unit until I retired.
Oh, you were not in ROTC, but worked with the ROTC.
Well, yeah, active duty people train the ROTC.
Right.
They train at the colleges, at the different colleges.
Right.
Yeah.
Leonard, thank you so much for your service for the Korean nation. I want to present the Certificate of Ambassador for Peace, which is made by the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs of the Republic of Korea. Your name in Korean.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Leonard Laconia.
Thank you very much for your service.
Good.
And this is the medal, also made by the same ministries and association. Glad to meet Airman. And again, we thank you as a Korean nation.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for the interview too.
Yeah.